I have a storage problem at the moment, and I can't really progress much further in the direction I want to go without solving it. And I think my solution is going to be attractive to a lot of y'all out there. Now, my shop, it's a fairly decent sized shop. It's about 450 square feet, maybe a little bit larger than a one-car garage. And I have a little shed out back that I keep wood in. But in production woodworking, I need to store stuff while it dries, and I would really like to store it in this air-conditioned area so it would dry quicker and in a more controlled manner. Meaning my bowl blanks, they're bulky, but they don't weigh a lot, and if I need to store 300 of them, I need a lot of space. And the only way I can do that one in this shop is to use space I'm currently wasting. And I think it relates very well to a lot of y'all out there that might just have a garage for your vehicle and you want to store stuff, but you still want to be able to open up your garage doors. Let's take care of that by utilizing the corners of our ceiling. Now, when we first started outfitting this shop, I put safety rails, the very first thing, all the way around this thing because I was planning on doing this storage. It just took me this long to get going on it. Now, I call that a safety rail because whenever I put the legs of for the tall shelving, I wanted those to anchor against the wall and not be able to pull off. And that worked great for those end caps where I have a lot of heavy iron tools on the storage section. I totally overbuilt those, and I do have a video on how I did those, and they are really inexpensive to build. But for up here, for the light, bulky stuff, I'm talking maybe 100 pounds per 4-foot section. Well, that safety rail, I have 2 screws going into every single stud, every 16 inches. So that should be able to hold a lot of shear weight coming down. Now, I know some people would put a, what do they call it, French cleat on those, just so that you could just stick stuff on there. I didn't do that one for the simple reason we create a lot of dust. I figured it'd just be a dust magnet. If it's flat, it will blow off. But I'm going to use that weight-bearing capacity for these lightweight shelves, and I'm going to do it as inexpensively as I possibly can. I'm going to do that by sticking with inexpensive construction material and using as very little as possible. So for the brackets, the braces, and the shelf support, I'm going to continue using construction grade material. This stuff right here, we're still in high material prices. They had 2 different bins at the big box store. One of them was selling studs for $3 per 8-foot section, and what was in there was just trash. One level above of it was what they called select studs, and they were charging $6 per 104 inches or something like that. That's what I bought here. So each one of these cost me $6, which in the grand scheme of things isn't going to add up to that much for as much shelving as we're going to be getting. For the shelves themselves, I'm going to be using the wood as pretty much a weight bearing. Now, when I did those inexpensive shelves that had support going to the ground, I did use OSB. That's because the frame was what was carrying the majority of the weight, not the OSB itself. Well, for this situation, there's going to be a lot of torque on the shelving, so I don't want to use OSB. That would be a horrible idea. It might work for a few years, but with moisture changes in the shop, moisture sitting on the shelves, it would eventually crumble. Plywood would be a good option, but for right now, this 1x12, it's 8 feet long. I could buy 4 of them for the same price as a substandard piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and for 12-foot, 8-foot long sections, you get about the same amount of material, and solid wood will always make a better shelf. Plywood sags more than solid woods. That's why you don't make bookcases out of plywood and without a lot of bracing. And I am going to support it a little bit with that support I talked about earlier. I will say this, I absolutely hate this whitewood stuff, but I'm using it now just because prices I'm trying to keep the price low on this project, and I only bought one of them so that I'm going to build enough brackets and supports for the entire shop, but I'm only going to build one complete shelf now until I get a little bit more cash in. That way all I have to do is cut the shelves and put them up. So here's a quick descriptor of those components that I talked about. We have my wall right here, and right now I have that 2x4 that I have up there as a safety rail. Now I talked about a bracket. Well, that's what's going to be attaching to that safety rail. And basically I want to have a 2x4 that comes down all the way over here, and then I will put another 2x4 right here that I will glue and screw. So the glue is going to hold most of the support. That is what's going to hold all the weight of the shelf. I'm also going to put another 2x4 down here that I'm just going to screw on, because all that is doing is preventing the shelf bracket from rotating back into the wall because it is off a distance. And then I'm going to put another 2x4 right here, and that is going to be the shelf support. I'm calling that component the bracket. The shelf itself is going to rest on that one. And this right here is incredibly important because I see so many people online that are building shelves for bookcases and stuff like that, and they're just running a screw straight into their shelf. It's not a good idea. Not only are you cutting the strength of that joint down by 2/3, and I'll explain that later, but it's just not going to hold up. Finally, we're going to put a brace on it. It's just going to come down right here. And once again, we will have a cut off 2x4 for the shelf to rest on. And then I will put a support all along that just to help keep it from bowing as much. It's more like turning it into I-race. It's a very simple design, but in the process of building each one of those components, there's things you've got to take care of or bring into consideration in order to make this super lightweight, low material shelf actually work. There's lots of failure points if you don't think it all the way through. I'm going to be using my miter saw to cut all these components just because it's quick, easy, and really accurate, or accurate enough for this application. Now, for this to work properly, you don't have to have everything perfect. If you're a 16th of an inch off here or there, it's no big deal. So this is eminently doable with a simple hand saw, or circular saw, jigsaw, just about anything you can use to cut a board. So you don't have to have all the tools I have to do this one. Just get the boards cut. Now here's a little tip for all y'all that do use a miter saw, and you have to have a stop block on your saw itself, on the fence. Well, a lot of times gunk will get up in these corners right here, and it won't let you get a good solid seat, so you don't get a good quality cut. So on every single cut, you have to watch out for this spelching on the outside, like there. So what I will do is, after I make a cut, make sure the saw blade is fully stopped before you lift it up, because it will easily pinch there, which will not only move your block but might toss your piece of wood. But then I will flip the board, because this is where the spelching is. This is where all the wood will come up and clog up on that inside corner and prevent you from getting a good solid reference against your stop block. So for my shop, I've got 16 4-foot sections. That'll give me enough brackets to get all the way around. And to assemble those brackets, I've got my 48 plus a few extra little square blocks. And basically they're the exact size of this either way, and that's important. So to start assembling the brackets, all I'm going to do is glue one side, and that's going to be the top of the bracket that's going to support all the weight. So, do a good job gluing it up. But whenever I install these glued ones, I want to make sure that I have the grain going with it. I don't want to do it this way, because you'll get your best glue bond with long grain to long grain but also if the grain is going in line. So, you know, if you're gluing up two side pieces, you do it like that and you get good strong glue joint. Once I have that and I've got it flush on top, and because all my boards are exactly the same size, I can use them as a reference. I'm not going to, what some people call pre-drilling, or you can just call it drilling. I don't really care. And the reason why I'm doing that is because whenever I screw it, I'm actually not concerned about the threads grabbing on this board. I want them to grab on that board. And because this is such a short board, it's more likely, even though it is softwood, to split because it doesn't have as much board to keep together along the path. It's just a little bit of reassurance. And then just screw that one down. And I am using 2.5-inch screws so that it won't go all the way through. Now I've got my weight bearing clamp on there. I'm just going to do the same exact thing to the bottom, except this time, because this one's not bearing any weight, I'm just going to screw it down. Do that to all 16, then we'll come back and do the other side. And after that part of the bracket is done, we now need to put the ledge that's going to hold the shelf on. And we're going to do that one a little bit different. So I've got my glued on side, this side. I told you earlier that you always want to glue grain going in line with each other. But this time, we're going to go against that rule. And it will make a lot more sense the moment we actually screw our shelves onto this piece right here. So once again, I'm going to go put glue on one side, pretty heavy amount, and then screw this thing on. Now the only critical aspect measurement-wise this entire project is you want the distance from the bottom of this to the top of that to be consistent all the way across. So how I'm accomplishing that is I just made this side flush and this is now flush right here, so the interiors will be the same. If you don't get that one, your shelves are going to be all wonky. And that works because this piece right here is consistent on all of mine. And one note, when you're screwing in, make sure that you're not going to be screwing screws head to head. Go ahead and offset them from either side. Now, if you're enjoying this video, you could do me a big favor right now and go ahead and like, favorite, subscribe, do all those social medias and stuff, because we're really close to a major milestone on the channel as far as subscribers. It'd just be kind of a nicety to hit that goal before the end of the year. So with those 16 done, let's go ahead and move on to the brace. Now the brace is going to be the most complicated piece we do. So right now I've got this 12-inch square. If you don't have something like this, which I highly encourage you, go get them. They're less than 10 bucks. But if you don't, just go find a cardboard box and tear off one of those, the flaps, because generally you're going to have a 90-degree there and it's going to be more than 12 inches. Mark out 12 inches over, and our 12-inch board that we're using for the shelf is actually 11.25 inches, so this is a little bit longer, but it'll work for our things. Now, the brace is going to be the most complicated part we are going to do, but I'm trying to take as much complication out as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a substitute for my shelf. I'm just going to stick this point right here up on the corner right there, and then I'm going to kind of eyeball about 2/3 of the way over on the shelf, and that's going to be my angle. So if I can put a little support down here to hold it up, there we go. We have where our brace is going to be. So now all I need to do is come up under here with a pencil, and I'm going to mark off the notch that I'm going to have to cut off right here, and then the angle I need right here. Then I'm going to come down and do the same exact thing over here. Just take I'll just get a straight edge. And I can kind of eyeball the angle, one side, the other side, looking straight down, and then connect them up. And there's my angle for the other side. From here, I can just take a third piece, put it down, make sure I get all the way edge to edge. I'm going to come down and mark this. So what do I end up with? I end up with a piece that I'm going to have to glue down that's going to be the counterpoint for this piece, the ledge that the shelf is going to sit on. I had the bottom angle and I had the top angles. So now it's just a matter of cutting 16 of these, one for each side of the shelf out, any way you can. Now to make my life easier, I make one template and that way I can just place this on a 2x4 and draw my lines to cut everything out. And if they are all close to this one, I know my shelves will be good enough. Now if you want to check your template, remember this is supposed to be a 90-degree shelf. So if you've got this square right here, you can kind of brace it up on bottom and line it up, and that should be a pretty good line right there. And that'll give you your 90 degrees. Now, for those of y'all curious, my template did turn out to be 40 degrees on one side, 50 degrees on the other, which, if you can do the math, comes up to 90 degrees. 90 degrees, another way to check. With those support blocks cut, we can now go ahead and glue and screw them to the braces. And just like we did with the brackets, I'm going to go against conventional glue up rules, and I'm going to go across grain with the glue up. Reason being, whenever we screw in the shelf, I want the screws to go across the grains here. You never want to screw into end grain. It's not going to give you any kind of grip. In fact, if you don't know these kind of general rules I'm talking about, I have a whole prerequisite woodworking series, which I'll put a link to that playlist here. That'll cover all that kind of stuff, such as nails and glues and screws and stuff. Well, the other thing you need to consider is, remember, these are bookends for the shelf, so you don't want to glue all of them to the same side. If you did that one, you wouldn't be able to put a shelf together. So half of them, you're going to need to glue on one side, half the other. Other than that, it's just busy work. And while you're drilling everything together, you might as well pre-drill or drill, however you want to term it, all the little places you're going to be screwing these in sideways. Remember, these are going to be going on the clip, so you can put basically 1, 2, 3 screws into this piece right here. With everything glued, screwed, and pre-drilled, I'm going to go ahead and pre-assemble all the side brackets, the side braces to the wall brackets. And I'm going to do that by using my workbench, because I know that this is a pretty close to a 90-degree angle. If you don't have a workbench, you know, just any old table, if you're fairly sure it's got a 90-degree corner, you do it. Or anything, a piece of cardboard on the ground, you can do this trick. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to line this up with there. I'm going to use a second bracket just because it's the same height. And then I can simply line up the base of this with my table down there, and I should have it 90 degrees. And then all I have to do is throw in those 3 screws, and that component will be complete. Me personally, put in the middle one so that you can have some ability to rotate it before you lock it in with the second one. Voila. And I guess to make life easier, you could go ahead and put one hole to drill a screw in right in the middle. That screw's one purpose is to keep that against the wall, so it's never really going to be bearing any weight. Now, I don't think it's necessary. I've got those screwed up there, but I am also going to put some nails on there. And yes, I can go use a fancy little nail gun. You can use a hammer and nails if you want. The key thing is I'm going to angle the nails down so that if it is supporting any weight, well, if it needs to pull off, it actually has to pull the weight up before it can pull itself off. So it's just a little bit more security thing. And nails will always hold more weight than the screw. It's just their nature. Next, I'm turning my attention to the shelf, and that intention means that I'm going to round over the edge. You'll notice I haven't done any kind of cosmetic work to any of the wood, simply because to my mind this is utility shelving in a shop. But I do want to round over this edge right here because A, it's splintery and I'm going to get splinters bumping up against it if I leave it as is. And B, I found that pine especially, if you leave crisp edges on it, it doesn't last as long. A nice round over just takes a lot more abuse. And that's the only thing I'm doing to it other than cutting it to length to fit up there. Well, there we go. I'm pretty happy with the strength of these. I will say that I had planned on putting a brace underneath, a support underneath them, connecting a 2x4 from here to here, not necessarily connecting it here, but just to keep it, screwing it up here. But these are a lot stiffer than I thought they'd be. If I was doing plywood, I most definitely would, but I think I'm going to hold off on that one just to save a little money and see if they sag at all, because I don't believe they will. And these, I mean, they're going to hold a lot of weight. So, I'm happy. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, maybe learned a few tips or tricks like these, but hey, that was wasted space earlier. And that's a very lightweight, might not be the prettiest shelf in the world, but I'm sure if you want to spend a little bit more time, you could dress it up somehow. But for me, it's going to be out of my pictures. I can store a lot of bowls up there, and as soon as I get maybe $100 more bucks, I'll go buy some more of that pine, and I'll do the rest of the shelves around the shop. And we're going to be all set for a really great year in 2023 working art markets with all the bowls I'll have available ready to rock and roll. That's my purpose for it. I'm sure you could have a lot more other purposes for shelving. That's out of the way. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. Be safe, have fun, and remember, it's always worth the effort to learn, create stuff, and share with others.